Hi, my name's Cara Pritchard and I'm from Mas National in South Australia, and today I'm joined by my lovely colleague Leanne Rayner, who's from our Victorian team. We're going to talk all things apprenticeships and traineeships, but we're also going to share with you some really exciting news on a subsidy called Boosting Apprenticeship Commencement Wage Subsidy. Over to you, Leanne.
Thanks, Cara. So who are Mas National and who are we? Mas National is an Australian apprenticeship support network provider, which is a mouthful. We've been delivering apprenticeship support services for 23 years, and that includes promoting training and employment pathways. So our organisation works to support industry through workforce development, and we support schools and community groups, job seekers, career changers and school leavers into meaningful employment. So the most common question we get, Cara, as you know, is what is an apprenticeship or a traineeship? So an Australian apprenticeship, which is a common phrase, it's an Australian apprenticeship is an apprenticeship or traineeship, which is a learning pathway that combines paid on-the-job training with formal study through a registered training organisation. So basically, earn as you learn. By completing an apprenticeship or traineeship, the learner gains a nationally recognised qualification as well.
You're absolutely right, Leanne. We do get asked that question all the time. And the good news is we are here to work with you to help you understand which apprenticeships and traineeships are actually available in your sector. So what are the benefits of apprenticeships and traineeships? Well, from the employer's point of view, there is funding that's available, and that is funding that we're going to go into a bit more detail about in this recording. But there is also state government initiatives that will be specific to your business. So we can actually work with you to help you understand those. That could be things like payroll tax and other incentives that are happening in particular states. It also leads to improved productivity. So if a staff member has been trained properly, they are able to undertake their work and you will see benefits of that training in their daily work. It also leads to increased staff retention, and trained employees quite often meet legislative requirements of industry. So lots of different industries will have certain requirements where training has to be done to a certain level, and you can actually attain those, meet those levels by undertaking apprenticeships or traineeships. There are also benefits for both the apprentice or trainee. They can gain relevant training for their job role. As Leanne mentioned earlier, they achieve a nationally recognised qualification. They earn while they learn, and it does increase their loyalty because they can feel that they're being invested in as part of your business.
Absolutely, Cara. So funding, and this is one of our other common questions that we receive and something that we love to talk about. So funding for trainees and apprentices. So what incentives are available to those who undertake a traineeship or an apprenticeship? So potential standard incentives. So these are the incentives that have been around all the time or have been around for years. Obviously, there's eligibility criteria, but the basics are that there's a commencement incentive, which is paid at the 6-month point, and that's around $1,500. The completion incentive, which is paid on successful completion of the traineeship or apprenticeship, which is $2,500. And as you mentioned before, Cara, there's also extra state funding as well. But in terms of the federal funding, there's also extra funding available for employers who take on school-based apprentices or trainees, or for those undertaking a qualification that's on the National Skills Shortage list. And that could also be up to an additional $4,000. So you could have your $4,000 commencement and completion and an additional $4,000 for somebody undertaking an NSNL qualification for supporting adult apprentices as well. So anyone over 21. So that's an extra incentive also.
And we can work with you to help you understand which qualifications are on that National Skills Needs list, because there are some qualifications that are relevant to your industry there. Absolutely. Now, without further ado, a bit of information around the Boosting Apprenticeship Commencement. So as we all know, COVID has continued to be a challenge here in Australia and obviously a challenge in some of the states that we work in at the moment. So out of that, the Boosting Apprenticeship Commencement's wage subsidy was generated, and it is a subsidy that provides extra support to employers who engage new apprentices and trainees, and the support is in the form of a 12-month wage subsidy capped at $28,000 per eligible apprentice or trainee. So that it is actually per, so you could potentially take on 10 new apprentices or trainees and actually attract the subsidy for all of them. It is available to all new workers who meet primary eligibility, and we'll take you through a bit of information on that as we go through this slideshow. It also is available to existing workers who are on the trades list. And again, we'll work with you so you understand who that is specifically, or existing workers who have transitioned from casual to part-time or full-time, or from part-time to full-time to undertake the apprenticeship or traineeship. Now, I know that sounds like a mouthful, but we will actually work through with you individually to help you understand who that is that falls into those categories. So
yeah, you're
over
right,
to you,
Cara.
Leanne.
Thanks. And I think in addition to that, I mean, this COVID incentive or the Boosting Apprenticeships Commencement Wage Subsidy is all about getting people into work or creating more permanent positions. So converting those people from casual into permanent part-time or permanent full-time positions. So
absolutely, the government are happy to support the fact that employers are actually able to provide those opportunities to the individuals, and then in return the government want to support them through that process.
Agreed. So the wage subsidy, and am I eligible, which is a common question. What is that primary eligibility that you spoke about before? So for an employer to be eligible for the Boosting Apprenticeship Commencement Wage Subsidy, the apprentice or trainee must be undertaking a certificate 2 or higher qualification, which, as you mentioned, we can go through in more detail. And they must meet that primary eligibility. So they've either got to be a citizen, an Australian citizen or permanent resident, or a New Zealand passport holder who's been in the country for 6 months or longer. They must have appropriate employment and training arrangements that we mentioned before. And if they're an existing worker, they must meet that existing worker criteria that we mentioned just on the earlier slide. They also need to have a training contract that's formally approved by the state training authority in their state, but that's the part that we assist with. So we get that training contract done, and once it's submitted and approved, then you're hunky-dory.
So really, we're here to support you through that whole process. Now, what is classified as a new worker? So in the government's eyes for this particular program, a new worker is someone who's worked for the business less than 3 months full-time or less than 12 months part-time or casual. So there is a fairly large window there, and we can sit down with you and look at your full workforce development piece and work out who those new workers are and make sure that there is an opportunity to maximise the subsidy for them. An existing worker is someone who's been with the current employer for more than 3 months full-time or more than 12 months part-time. But as we mentioned before, there are opportunities to transition people from casual to part-time or full-time, or from part-time to full-time. And what kind of qualifications can be done through an apprenticeship or traineeship? Well, you can actually undertake a certificate 2 through to advanced diploma qualifications. And I think a lot of the time people think apprenticeships and traineeships are entry-level qualifications and qualifications that aren't at that higher level, but there are so many different, I think it's over 500 qualifications that are available. So we can work through that with you. And in your industry, there are potential qualifications in the ICT, security, the cabling. There are also business certificates, because there are people who would be working in the offices or working in the back end to support you. And there are also leadership qualifications that are available. So we haven't actually listed all of the qualifications because there are so many of them, but we can work with you individually to work out what the appropriate qualification is for your business.
You're absolutely right, Cara. And I think it's important to note that when we talk about apprenticeships and traineeships, everyone thinks about those traditional trade apprenticeships that are available, and everybody knows those trades, but it equally applies to traineeships, where it could be basically any job that you think of, there could be a traineeship connected to that.
Absolutely.
So is my business eligible for the Boosting Apprenticeships Commencement, or I'm going to call it back from now on? It's a mouthful.
Much easier.
Yeah, all businesses are eligible regardless of their size, income or geographic location. To be eligible, you need to engage an Australian apprentice or trainee anytime between the 5th of October 2020, so last year, and the 31st of March 2022. So that 12 months starts whenever your start date of your traineeship or apprenticeships commences. And your Australian apprentice or trainee needs to be undertaking that certificate 2 or higher qualification and have a training contract that's fully approved or formally approved by the relevant state training authority. And as Cara mentioned before, we'll support you through this whole process. So if you have somebody that you're just not sure about whether they're eligible or not, or you've got a whole group of people, whether you're not sure or you're wanting to take someone on, we'll actually work with you to give you some sort of indication of what you may be eligible for.
So I guess this is a pretty important one. How much is the subsidy? Well, as we mentioned earlier, it is up to $28,000. So The wage subsidy is 50% of the Australian apprentice or trainee's gross wage paid, capped at $7,000 a quarter. So there'll be 4 different quarters, and in each of them there is up to the $7,000 that can be claimed back. The wage subsidy is available for wages paid in a 12-month period from the commencement date, which Leanne alluded to earlier. When will the payments be made? A very common question we get asked. So as I said, they are paid quarterly in arrears, and they are directly into the employer's nominated bank account. So MAS do administer this process. We send out a claim form. We ask you to fill out the claim form and attach the wage evidence for that period of time. And then we go through and pay the claim, which I think I've just answered my next question before I even got to it. Over to you, Leanne.
Thanks, Cara. And just to remember, something to remember is that this boosting apprenticeship commencement wage subsidy is in addition to those standard incentives that we mentioned before. So it could be $28,000 wage subsidy plus the $4,000 standard incentives and plus any extra incentives that may be available through the federal government, plus any state government incentives that might be available as well. So are there any specific exclusions for back? So an employer will not be paid back or the boosting apprenticeships commencement wage subsidy where the employer is receiving any other form of Australian government wage subsidy or equivalent for that apprentice or trainee, or that the Australian apprentice or trainee is undertaking a qualification that they've already done before, basically. So even if it's an upgrade of the same qualification, they won't be able to attract the back. So long as they're doing something new, that's all fine. And then what if your apprentice or trainee cancels or suspends through the claim period? That's fine. All you need to do is let us know, and you get paid up until that date where they've cancelled. Or if they're suspended, you can pick up that payment again once they're back and working with you.
Awesome. Thanks, Leanne. Well, that brings us to the end and really what's next. So our team, as we've mentioned throughout the entire recording, we're here to support you through the process. We have staff members all across Australia who are out in their cars, available to pop into your business and sit down with you and learn about your business and learn about what your needs are, and then work out what the best workforce development plan is for you that aligns to apprenticeships and traineeships, so you're able to maximise the opportunities that are available. You'll see on the next slide mine and Leanne's details. You're more than welcome to contact us directly. We can link you with the appropriate people, and we will be online to answer your questions. So we look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leanne.